2 hours and 14 minutes. That's how long he stood there screaming at me in the conference room. I counted every single minute on that stupid chrome wall clock behind his head while 32 people watched. My colleagues, my team, even the intern who started Monday. All of them just staring. Nobody said a word when he slammed his hand on the table so hard my water glass tipped over. Nobody moved when he called me fundamentally incompetent and the biggest mistake in company history. The quarterly numbers were down 6.2% in my division, and apparently that meant I deserved a public execution. When he finally stopped, my silk blouse was soaked with sweat under my blazer. The silence felt like concrete hardening around me. And then I heard my own voice, steady as a surgeon's hand. "Anything else, sir?" He actually looked startled, like he expected me to cry, or quit, or both. "No," he finally said. "Just fix it." I nodded, gathered my papers, and walked out without rushing. 32 pairs of eyes burned into my back. I didn't break until I got to my car in the underground parking garage. Then I screamed into my steering wheel until my throat felt like sandpaper. That was Tuesday, May 17th, the day I decided Damon Caldwell needed to lose everything. Sorry, I should introduce myself. I'm Melina Vega, 34, Senior Director of Market Analytics at a Fortune 500 financial services firm. Or I was, until 3 months ago. People who know me professionally would describe me as methodical, composed. The woman who triple checks her work and comes to meetings with backup plans for her backup plans. My mother calls me intensely practical, which in Cuban mom language means boring. But here's something about practical people. We know how systems work. We see the gears turning. We understand cause and effect. Before I go deep into this, if you're really interested in knowing what happened next, could you please give this video a like? Also subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to get notified when we upload new videos like these. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because trust me, what I'm about to share might be the most valuable lesson some of you ever learn about workplace justice. Let me tell you about Damon Caldwell, 46, Executive Vice President, Harvard MBA. The kind of man who has a yacht but doesn't actually like sailing. He just likes hosting parties where everyone has to take their shoes off before coming aboard. He'd been with the company for 17 years and had the CEO's complete trust. 5 years ago, he personally selected me for promotion to senior director, telling me I had potential beyond my experience. For 4 years, I excelled. My team consistently outperformed projections. I won internal awards. Clients requested me specifically for presentations. But something changed last year. Damon stopped acknowledging my successes, started nitpicking minor issues, excluded me from meetings I should have attended. I tried talking to him directly, professional, respectful conversations about my concerns. He'd nod, promise to look into it, then nothing would change. I started documenting everything, every email, every meeting, every report, just in case. Then came the Morton account. A massive potential client worth millions in annual revenue. Damon assigned it to my team, but with impossible deadlines. When I pointed this out, he smiled and said, "I thought you were exceptional, Melina. Prove me right." My team worked around the clock for 2 weeks. I didn't see my apartment except to shower and change clothes. We delivered a flawless presentation package, addressing every concern the client had raised in preliminary discussions. The morning of the presentation, Damon called me into his office. "There's been a change of plans," he said, not looking up from his computer. "Lyle's team will handle the Morton presentation." Lyle Donovan, the golden boy who'd been with the company less than a year, the one who played golf with Damon on weekends. "My team has been working on this for 2 weeks," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We've addressed all their concerns, built the models, and Lyle's team will use that excellent groundwork." Damon interrupted. "This isn't personal, Melina. Morton specifically requested a fresh perspective." I knew it was a lie. I'd spoken with Juliette Morton myself 3 days earlier to confirm some details. She was expecting me. "I'd like to at least attend the presentation," I said. Damon finally looked at me, his expression almost pitying. "That won't be necessary. Focus on your quarterly numbers." They're looking concerning. I left his office feeling sick because I knew what was happening. I'd seen it before with Anaya from legal, with Thomas from product development. Damon building people up, then systematically dismantling them when they became too successful, too visible, too much competition. Later that day, I learned that Lyle's presentation had gone brilliantly. Morton signed with us. Damon sent a company-wide email praising Lyle's innovative approach and exceptional client management. My team's name wasn't mentioned once. 2 weeks later came that Tuesday. The public humiliation. 2 hours and 14 minutes of calculated destruction. What Damon didn't know was that I'd been preparing. Not for that specific moment, but for something like it. Because practical people see patterns. That night, I didn't cry anymore. I made a pot of coffee and opened my laptop. I had 3 folders of evidence already compiled. First, documentation of all the times Damon had taken credit for women's and minorities' work over the past 5 years. Emails, meeting recordings where consent was given, presentation files with metadata showing original creators. Second, proof that Damon had manipulated data on 3 major accounts to make his personal performance look better while making other divisions, including mine, look worse. Third, and most damning, evidence that Damon had been quietly steering certain clients toward his brother-in-law's consulting firm, creating a significant conflict of interest that violated company policy and possibly federal regulations. But it wasn't enough. Damon was too protected, too valuable to the company. They might reprimand him, maybe even demote him, but they wouldn't remove him. And he would definitely destroy me in the process. I needed leverage that would make it impossible for the company to choose him over justice. So I made a new plan, a 3-phase plan that would take months to execute. It would require patience, perfect timing, and the willingness to risk everything. But when you've already lost your dignity in front of 32 colleagues, the risk calculation changes. Phase 1, I needed allies, carefully selected, strategically positioned people who had also suffered under Damon but still had credibility within the company. I started with Imani Rhodes, a brilliant analyst who'd been passed over for promotion twice despite having the best performance metrics in her division. Damon had once jokingly asked her in a meeting if her natural hair was a political statement. I invited her to coffee at a shop 10 blocks from the office. "I'm not here to complain about Damon," I told her after some small talk. "I'm here because I'm doing something about him, and I think you might want to be involved." She studied me for a long moment. "What exactly are you planning?" "Justice," I said, "but I need to know you're in before I share details." Imani sipped her coffee. "The Morton account wasn't the first time he's done this to you, was it?" "No, and you weren't the only one he's made jokes about." She nodded slowly. "I'm listening." Next was Thomas Chen from Finance, who'd compiled a report showing inconsistencies in expense allocations, a report Damon had buried. Then Sonia Martinez from Legal, who'd been silenced when she raised concerns about some of Damon's client arrangements. One by one, I built a small coalition, never meeting as a group, never communicating by company email or phone, using encrypted messaging apps and meeting in places without security cameras. Phase 2. We needed more evidence, the kind that couldn't be explained away. Sonia helped me understand exactly what legal lines Damon had crossed. Thomas showed me how to follow the money through the labyrinth of company accounts. Imani taught me how to build data models that would reveal the patterns of Damon's manipulations. For 3 weeks, I got to work at 6 in the morning and didn't leave until 8 at night. I performed my actual job perfectly. There was no chance I was giving Damon even the smallest excuse to come after me. But every free moment I had was spent building our case. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Damon's executive assistant, Zara, sent me a meeting invitation with just the location. The garage stairwell, B level. When I arrived, she was already there, looking nervous. "I don't have long," she said without preamble. "But you should know that Mr. Caldwell has been meeting with the CEO about restructuring your division. They're discussing eliminating your position entirely." My stomach dropped. "Why are you telling me this?" Her eyes hardened. 3 years ago, before I worked for Mr. Caldwell, I filed a sexual harassment complaint against him. It mysteriously disappeared from HR records. When I followed up, I was told continuing to spread rumors could impact my employment. I nodded slowly. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm not looking for sympathy, Zara said. I'm looking for consequences. I have access to Mr. Caldwell's calendar, emails, and files. I've been documenting things that seemed questionable. I don't know if it's useful, but she handed me a small USB drive. This is very useful, I said quietly, and very brave. She shook her head. It's self-preservation. I hear things. I know he's planning to replace me with someone younger. More visually appealing was the term he used to the CEO. That night, I reviewed the files Zara had provided. They contained exactly what we needed. Evidence of Damon deliberately manipulating financial reports to make certain divisions, including mine, look worse than they were, while inflating his own results. There were emails proving he'd diverted potential clients to his brother-in-law's firm in exchange for kickbacks. And most disturbing, a pattern of targeting employees, particularly women and minorities, who he viewed as threats. I was simultaneously vindicated and horrified. This man had systematically destroyed careers while the company looked the other way. We now had enough evidence to not just remove Damon, but to potentially trigger federal investigations into financial improprieties. But releasing it would create a scandal that would hurt hundreds of innocent employees. The company's stock would plummet, people would lose jobs, retirement accounts would be devastated. I needed a surgical strike, not a nuclear bomb. That's when I formulated Phase 3, the most dangerous part of the plan. I would need to convince the board of directors that removing Damon quietly was in their best interest. I would need irrefutable evidence presented in a way that gave them no choice but to act. And I would need to ensure Damon couldn't destroy me in the process. The annual board retreat was scheduled for the following month at a luxury resort in Arizona. Every senior executive would be there, including the CEO and Damon. I wasn't invited. My level wasn't high enough. But Sonia from legal would be attending to present on regulatory compliance. We spent the next 3 weeks preparing a presentation unlike any other. We compiled the evidence into clear, undeniable exhibits. Financial data, email trails, witness statements, everything meticulously documented and verified. We created a secure website where it could all be accessed with a password, ready to be projected on screen. Sonia would have exactly 7 minutes to present on her assigned topic before the lunch break. We rehearsed how she would smoothly transition from regulatory compliance to specific compliance concerns regarding one executive, without naming Damon until the evidence was on screen. The night before the retreat, I couldn't sleep. We had one shot at this. If it failed, we would all likely lose our jobs, possibly be blacklisted in the industry. Damon had powerful friends. At 4:37 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Sonia, her voice tight with panic. They've changed the schedule. I'm not presenting until tomorrow, and they've cut my time to 3 minutes. My mind raced. Could be coincidence. There's more, Sonia continued. Damon cornered me at the welcome reception. Said he was looking forward to discussing my future with the company. He knows something's happening, Melina. I closed my eyes, trying to think. Where's the CEO right now? Still at the reception, I think. Most people are heading to dinner soon. Is your presentation ready to go? Loaded on your laptop? Yes, but... Fine, Thomas. Tell him to create a distraction at dinner. Something big enough to clear the room, but not serious enough to end the event. Then get the CEO alone. Tell him you have urgent information he needs to see before tomorrow's sessions. Melina, I can't just... You can. We've come too far to back down now. Call me after. The next 3 hours were the longest of my life. I paced my apartment, checking my phone every few minutes. Finally, at 8:23 in the evening, Sonia called back. It worked, she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration. Thomas spilled an entire tray of drinks on the governor's wife. While everyone was helping clean up, I got 5 minutes with the CEO, told him I had concerning information about financial improprieties that couldn't wait until tomorrow. And he watched the first 2 minutes of the presentation and stopped me. Said we needed to take this to his suite immediately. Melina, He called an emergency closed session with 3 board members. They watched the whole thing. My heart hammered in my chest. What did they say? The CEO asked me to stay in Arizona an extra day, said they'd need to address this situation immediately. Then he thanked me for my courage in coming forward. I sat down hard on my couch. And Damon? No idea. He wasn't there. But the CEO's assistant was making calls as I left. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from Sonia and a text that just said, "Check your email now." I scrambled for my laptop, my heart pounding. A message had just come in from the CEO's executive office requesting that I join an urgent video call at 9 o'clock sharp. The time? 8:43. I didn't even shower, just threw on a blouse, ran a brush through my hair, and logged in from my dining table. When the call connected, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The CEO, Gerald Manning, sat at the center of a conference table with 4 board members and the company's general counsel. "Ms. Vega," Gerald said, his face unreadable, "I appreciate you joining us on short notice." I nodded, trying to look calm while my insides were liquidating. "We've reviewed some troubling information regarding Damon Caldwell's conduct and business practices," Gerald continued. "Information that appears to have been gathered by you and several colleagues over a significant period of time. Is that correct?" I took a deep breath. No going back now. "Yes, sir. After experiencing a pattern of inappropriate behavior and witnessing potential financial misconduct, I felt obligated to document these issues." One of the board members leaned forward. "Why didn't you bring these concerns through proper channels? HR? Ethics hotline?" I looked directly at the camera. "With respect, sir, I did. Twice. Both complaints were dismissed without investigation. Additionally, Mr. Caldwell's former assistant filed a sexual harassment complaint that mysteriously disappeared from HR records." The room went silent. Gerald exchanged glances with the general counsel. "Miss Vega," Gerald finally said, "we're conducting an immediate investigation into all of these allegations. Mr. Caldwell has been placed on administrative leave pending the results. We'd like you to come to headquarters today to provide a complete statement." "Of course," I said, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. "And Ms. Vega," Gerald added, "while we don't condone the method by which this information was gathered and presented, we do appreciate the courage it took to bring it forward. Please be assured there will be no retaliation against you or your colleagues." I almost laughed. No retaliation? After years of watching this company protect Damon while he destroyed careers? But I kept my face neutral. "Thank you, sir. I'll be there at whatever time works best." After the call ended, I sat at my dining table for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. They were investigating Damon. He was on leave. It seemed like a victory, but something felt wrong. Too easy. They were containing the situation, yes, but would there be real consequences? Or would they just give Damon a golden parachute, let him resign with dignity, maybe even help him land a similar position at another company where he could continue his behavior? That wasn't justice. That was damage control. My phone rang. Imani. "They just called me in for a statement," she said without preamble. "You?" "Same. Video call with the CEO and board. Damon's on leave." She was quiet for a moment. "You don't sound happy." "Because we both know how this usually ends. Confidential settlement. Non-disclosure agreements. He walks away rich while they bury everything." "So what's the alternative?" Imani asked. I closed my eyes. Phase 3B. "Melina, no. We agreed that was absolute last resort. It's too risky. Meet me at my place in an hour. Bring Thomas if you can. I'll call Sonia." Phase 3B was the nuclear option, the plan we'd created but hoped never to use. It would ensure Damon faced real consequences, but it could also blow back on all of us. By noon, my living room had become command central. Imani, Thomas, Sonia, and 2 others from our coalition were spread across my furniture, laptops open. "The company investigation will take weeks," I explained. "During that time, they'll be doing damage control, preparing statements, probably negotiating Damon's exit package. They'll want this to disappear as quietly as possible." "But the evidence is solid," Thomas argued. They can't just ignore financial improprieties. They can minimize them, Sonia countered. Attribute it to accounting errors or misunderstandings. I've seen it before. I nodded. Exactly. Which is why we need to ensure the investigation's findings become public, no matter what. You're talking about leaking confidential company information, Thomas said quietly. That could be career suicide. Maybe worse. Not if we do it right, I replied. We create a secure digital dead man switch. If Damon isn't fired for cause, if there's no public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, if they try to silence any of us with NDAs, the information automatically releases to financial regulators, key industry publications, and 3 specific business journalists who've covered corporate misconduct before. The room went silent as everyone considered the implications. We'd be risking everything, Imani finally said. We're already risking everything, I countered. At least this way, we ensure actual consequences. Slowly, one by one, they agreed. We spent the next 4 hours setting up the system, making sure it couldn't be traced back to any of us. The trigger would be simple. If Damon received any severance beyond his legal entitlement, or if he was allowed to resign rather than be terminated, or if the company didn't publicly acknowledge the misconduct, everything would automatically release. Then, we went to headquarters and gave our statements. Separately, each spending hours with investigators, HR representatives, and legal counsel. I provided all the evidence we'd gathered, minus the dead man's switch details. For the next 2 weeks, we waited, continued doing our jobs, pretended everything was normal while the investigation proceeded. Damon remained on leave, his office dark, his parking space empty. Then came a company-wide email from Gerald. After a thorough investigation, we have determined that Damon Caldwell engaged in behavior inconsistent with our values and policies. Mr. Caldwell is no longer with the company, effective immediately. We are committed to creating a workplace where all employees are treated with respect. The email continued with corporate speak about values and procedures, but the message was clear. Damon was gone. But there was no mention of financial misconduct, no acknowledgement of the careers he'd damaged, no apology to those he'd harassed and discriminated against. That afternoon, I was called to Gerald's office. He was alone, sitting behind his massive desk, looking tired. Ms. Vega, he said, gesturing to a chair. Please sit. I remained standing. I prefer to stand, thank you. He nodded, studying me. I wanted to personally inform you that Mr. Caldwell has been terminated without severance. The investigation confirmed many of the issues you raised. Many, but not all? I asked. Gerald's expression tightened. We found sufficient cause for termination. That's what matters. With respect, sir, it's not all that matters. What about the people whose careers he damaged? The financial misconduct? The harassment? Those matters are being addressed internally, Gerald said firmly. As for careers being damaged, including yours, I've personally reviewed recent performance evaluations and compensation decisions. Appropriate adjustments will be made. And the public accounting? Will the company acknowledge what actually happened? Gerald leaned forward. Ms. Vega, you've achieved what you wanted. Damon is gone, but dragging the company's reputation through the mud helps no one. It hurts shareholders, employees, clients. Is that what you want? I met his gaze steadily. What I want is accountability. Not just for Damon, but for the system that protected him for years while he hurt people. The system, Gerald repeated, his voice cooling. The same system that just terminated a senior executive based largely on evidence you gathered? The system that's not taking any action against you for how you gathered that evidence? The system that ignored formal complaints, that allowed HR records to disappear. That looked the other way for 17 years while Damon created a hostile work environment for anyone he saw as a threat, particularly women and minorities. Gerald was silent for a long moment. What exactly are you asking for, Ms. Vega? A public statement acknowledging the full scope of the misconduct, a formal apology to everyone affected, and a third-party audit of all promotion decisions, performance evaluations, and compensation adjustments made under Damon's influence over the past 5 years. That's completely unreasonable, Gerald said, color rising in his face. The legal and financial implications alone would be significant, I interrupted, but not as significant as what would happen if the full evidence became public. If regulators opened investigations into the financial improprieties, if class action attorneys got involved. His eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? It's reality, I said calmly. I'm not the only one with copies of the evidence, sir. 3 days later, the company issued a public statement far more detailed than anything I'd expected. It acknowledged systematic discrimination, harassment, and financial misconduct by a former executive. It announced the third-party audit I'd requested. It even included an apology to those whose careers and well-being were negatively impacted. The statement didn't name Damon, but industry insiders knew exactly who it referred to. His reputation was destroyed overnight. No golden parachute, no quiet transition to another company, no covering up what he'd done. 2 days after the statement, I got a call from a journalist at a major business publication asking for comment on the situation at your company. I declined, of course. But the story ran anyway, with anonymous sources describing Damon's behavior in detail. Then another publication ran a piece, then another. Within a week, Damon Caldwell became the poster child for toxic leadership and corporate accountability failures. His name became radioactive in the industry. No company would touch him. A month later, I was promoted to executive director with a significant raise. Gerald personally delivered the news, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. We both knew it wasn't just recognition of my abilities. It was insurance against potential lawsuits. But I took it anyway. Imani got her long overdue promotion too. Thomas was appointed to lead a new financial oversight committee. Sonia became head of a newly created ethics compliance team. Even Zara, Damon's former assistant, was offered a position with better pay and a clear advancement path. Justice, it seemed, had been served, but the victory felt hollow somehow. Because the system hadn't changed itself, we had forced its hand. And the moment we let up pressure, it would revert to protecting people like Damon again. That's when I made my final decision. I accepted the promotion, the raise, the corner office. I smiled in meetings with Gerald and the board. I played the good soldier for exactly 6 months. And then I resigned. My resignation letter was simple. I was leaving to start a consulting firm specializing in workplace culture and corporate accountability. What I didn't mention was that Imani, Thomas, Sonia, and several others were joining me as partners, or that our first clients would include 3 former employees who'd been forced out by Damon years earlier and were now C-suite executives at other companies. The day I cleaned out my office, Gerald came by. He leaned against my doorframe, watching me pack. You know, he said conversationally, I've been in business for 34 years, seen all kinds of people come and go, but I've never met anyone quite like you, Melina. I continued packing, not looking up. I'll take that as a compliment. It is, he said, surprising me. You could have just taken Damon down. Instead, you changed an entire company, forced us to confront issues we'd ignored for years. Now I did look up, and yet, when I leave today, you'll still be running that company essentially the same way. Gerald smiled slightly. Perhaps. Or perhaps you've left a mark deeper than you realize. The board has approved a complete restructuring of our reporting systems for misconduct. Anonymous, third-party managed. Even I won't be able to see who reports what until it's been properly investigated. That's unexpected, I admitted. You've made enemies, Melina, powerful ones. But you've made some admirers too. He straightened up. Your consulting firm. What's it called? Vega Partners. He nodded. Expect a call from our HR department in about a month. We'll be looking for outside expertise on implementing the new systems. With that, he walked away. I stood there, cardboard box in hand, feeling something I hadn't expected. Hope. Not just satisfaction at bringing down someone who deserved it, but actual hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. 2 years have passed since then. Vega Partners now has 27 employees and clients across 3 continents. We help companies identify and address toxic leadership before it becomes entrenched. We train executives on creating truly inclusive cultures. We design accountability systems that don't rely on individual courage to function. And Damon? Last I heard, he was trying to start a leadership coaching business out of his home. It's not going well. Turns out, when you Google his name, the first 3 pages of results are all about his misconduct and termination. Digital karma is forever. As for me, I sleep better now. The nightmares about those 2 hours and 14 minutes of public humiliation have mostly stopped. I still flinch sometimes when executives raise their voices in meetings, but I'm working on that. The company? They actually became a client 6 months ago. Gerald retired last year, and the new CEO is serious about cultural transformation. Sometimes change has to be forced, but once it starts, it can take on a life of its own. I want to be clear about something. What I did wasn't just personal revenge. It was accountability. It was refusing to let another generation of talented people be destroyed by toxic leadership. It was standing up not just for myself, but for Imani, for Thomas, for Zara, for everyone who'd been hurt by a system designed to protect people like Damon at the expense of people like us. If you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, document everything. Find allies. Know that you're not crazy for feeling mistreated. And most importantly, understand that systems can change, but rarely from within. Sometimes you have to walk away to make the biggest impact. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button. If you know someone who needs to hear this, someone struggling in a toxic workplace, someone being gaslighted by a powerful boss, share this video with them. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about workplace transformation and accountability, and leave a comment about your own experiences. Let others know they're not alone. Because that's how change really happens. One story, one witness, one act of courage at a time. I stood alone in that conference room for 2 hours and 14 minutes. But I'm not standing alone anymore, and neither are you.